Also mentioned another quote from Meltzer here. Perhaps the biggest frustration is that everyone knows the multi-million dollar angle that will turn the thing around, but it requires getting Bischoff, Goldberg, etc., and requires the McMahons to be vulnerable and requires the long-term wrestlers to accept the idea that because business is bad, some guys need to be jump-started ahead of existing and in most cases better talent. It's also mentioned here as he wraps up his diatribe here. It's not happening now, and it feels like we're in a holding pattern, waiting for, of all people, Kevin Nash to save the day. And that's not a position I'd like to gamble the industry on. But I do think that he sort of hits the nail on the head. In order for this thing to have really worked, the McMahons would have had to at least momentarily allowed the perception that, WCW is going to kick our ass. And they probably didn't want to do that. And they would have had to open up the checkbook to get Eric Bischoff to lead this group, not one of the McMahons.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't mean to cut you off, but while I'm thinking about it, it takes two to tango.
Sure.
Some of those guys that have been mentioned here, Kevin Nash, et cetera, how do we all know that they were wanting to get back on the road, wanting at the latter stages of their career? Because all of them are, had 20 years or so experience. They've been battered at surgeries and all this stuff. How do we all know that they wanted to get back on the road? Well, I can tell you who knows. I know. They weren't interested. And they were going to let their contracts play out with Time Warner, because Time Warner was paying a handsome sum to those individuals. So there's two definitive ways to looking at this thing. Is Meltzer right that if we had the full complement of talents and we had Goldberg and, all the other guys that had, Hall and Nash and all that good stuff, Eric would have been perfect. But, and I'm not saying Eric didn't want to come to work. I don't know that he did or he didn't, because I don't think he and I had a conversation about that at that point in time. But it was finally just decided that he would come to work, and he did a good job, did a real good job. That hug he had with McMahon on the stage was epic. And I thought Eric did a great job. He beat me in a match on Raw and got color. What's he want? So anyhow, but it takes two to tango. Some of those guys just didn't want to come back on the road. They weren't ready to come back on the road yet. And those that have been off, Conrad, want to make sure their bodies are right, make sure they were healthy, they look good, they're in show shape. And you can't get in show shape just being off work. You still got to train and prepare for it. And some of the guys just didn't seem to be motivated for that at that time.
But isn't that part of the other side of the coin? Like, if you don't have the right talent for this angle, maybe wait and do it when you do.
Well, I think that's a good point. But I think what we thought was what we had, combining all the talent, the Booker T's of the world from WCW, et cetera, and mixing them in with some established WWE guys with a great name identity was enough.
Yeah.
I think that was the thought. We hoped it would be enough, because there just wasn't any chance at that time to get to those other guys we talked about. It would have made my job a lot easier. But it just didn't work out.
I want to mention this show that we just recapped here, this Monday Night Raw, is one night after the No Mercy pay-per-view, which was a decent card, but it fell to its lowest rating in its normal time slot for a non-holiday show since March 30th, 1998. To put that in perspective, that's before Raw was able to end the 83-week streak of Monday Nitro. And that was against a Nitro and Monday Night Football. But boy, it's starting to taper off here in a major way. I also want to mention there's some other news from that episode of Raw. Meltzer would write, RVD pinned Show after a Van Daminator and a Frog Splash in 445. Originally, this match was supposed to be Rob Van Dam versus Undertaker. Plan A was for RVD to win, but kind of give him some steam coming off the pay-per-view loss. Plan B, not because Taker refused to do the job, but because several agents felt it would send a bad message for RVD to beat Taker, at least to the dressing room. They set up a finish where Austin would interfere and cost RVD the match. With Austin out, they couldn't come to any sort of agreement, So they just scrapped it and put show in the spot instead. Do you remember there being some, I don't know, backlash against Rob Van Dam? This is interesting to me that, hey, we can't have Rob Van Dam beat The Undertaker. What sort of message does that send to the locker room? That seems silly to me, Jim.
It is silly, Conrad. And I didn't know our agents were so benevolent and so caring and warm. And they thought it was the right political thing to do. They were trying to protect Taker. I understand their loyalty, and I admire that. But Taker had no issues doing business. I think that one of RVD's strikes was the fact that he was being endorsed so strongly by Heyman.
I see. Heyman is your commentary partner, just to give context for that. This is the era where Lawler's out. So he's probably beating that drum pretty hard, and maybe that's rubbing some guys the wrong way. I like that.
It could have been that way, because Paul could be very abrasive if he had the audience to be abrasive in front of.
Right.
And he's also very cerebral because he's so goddamn smart. And I'm not saying that in a facetious way. Yeah. He really is. But he could be dogged. He'd be a great salesman.
He is a great salesman.
Yeah, he is. Look at him now. He's a difference maker in WWE.
For sure.
And I'm happy for him. He's still a friend of mine. He was always a friend of mine. We argued like cats and dogs, but it's so what?
Right.
I thought we had a good team. I thought he and I did well together. I enjoyed working with him because he generally would figure out a way to piss me off. And when he did, then I would be Red Ass JR before Red Ass JR was making hot sauce. So, but I think that had an issue that Rob's biggest advocate, no pun intended here, was Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman had some issues with some older decision makers and older agents because he was more of a contemporary thinker. He was very smart. And sometimes Paul would come up with things that even though they may have tried to shoot holes in, it just didn't work. He was a smart guy. So I think that was the issue there, because you can't say it was Rob Van Dam's ability. Right. Rob Van Dam was great in the ring, and one of my favorite guys to watch and call matches for. He kept reinventing himself. He kept introducing new things into his repertoire, and he got over. He got over. So instead of going with what's getting over, again, decisions like this are what made that alliance thing fail. And I don't know that Vince ever had confidence in it. I was surprised that we did it. I was even more surprised that we cut it short, because I thought that this show, as we'll talk about here, that match was the show, in my opinion. Not to denigrate any of the other boys and ladies on the show, but that one match, and I love the fact that it was an elimination match. The boys didn't like it because that meant you got a lot of finishes.
Right.
Oh, I got to protect myself. Can you imagine trying to come up with something that's going to protect 9 finishes?
No.
Silly.
It's a little silly, but all right, real quick. I want to remind everybody, especially this time of year, did you know at savewithconrad.com, you can skip your next 2 house payments? That's right. You'll get a cheaper monthly payment and no payments until next year. How about a little Christmas vacation from house payments? That's right. No payments in November or December at savewithconrad.com.